Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and today we're going to look at what you should expect when you cap in Battle for Azeroth, because I've capped, I've been playing around with it for a few hours now, and some things are very similar, they'll all be instantly recognizable, but the purpose and the goal of what you're going to be doing when you cap has changed, and as far as I know, unsurprisingly, Blizzard is being very secretive about their end goals with a lot of things in BFA, maybe to just avoid any arguments. Seems to be the conclusion. They've changed. So you're going to be doing things that are kind of similar, but for different reasons. So through leveling, I think about 102, currently about 112, 113, you're going to unlock the boat, or your main central Horde base. Now, I want to be clear on something here. There's two separate sides to what's happening in BFA. You will be visiting this new continent, and you will set up like for the Horde, it's a Horde embassy in the main city, and for the Alliance it's in Borealis. However, you do have a separate, more private staging point for your faction. So whether that's going to come into play later in the expansion, it might do, is that although you are being friendly and pally with the new factions that you're meeting in BFA, it looks like they're still keeping some things away from the new factions. So in the Horde example, in the main city in Zuldazar, we have the Horde embassy. However, down at the port, which is one flight point away, we actually have the ship we arrived on. This is where there's a lot of other stuff going on. And you need to bear in mind that these 2 points that are happening that are close but separated off. One's very only Horde, and the other one is the mix of all the new factions and stuff like that. So down at your actual Horde port, you're going to unlock the mission table. Many people are familiar with this, but the scouting map to choose areas in the world and to do some follow missions is actually in the Horde Embassy. But down on the port, you'll actually receive a lot of the specific Horde quests, such as the first one being the mission table, where Garona will be there and things like that. And what they'll be doing, first of all, is sending you on missions to find outposts in the Alliance zones. So in BFA, the Horde get 3 zones to level through, the Alliance get 3 zones, but once you get going in the game and you're capped and things like that, you'll actually be in both zones. And they've introduced war mode where you can toggle your PvP active, and that'll allow you to do you'll be realm transferred to a realm where there are people who want to PvP who have also toggled their war mode, and you might get some extra bonuses and things from that. I'm going to play around with that soon so we can see what that looks like. But right now, the first missions you're going to get are to open an outpost in the other faction zones, right? So in order to have access to those zones, you need a staging point in those zones. So what you get then is a mini scenario. So for the Horde, it's like Drusvar, Stormsong Valley. You're going to go out to there. You're going to set up an outpost, which is really fun, by the way. I don't want to be negative here. This is really fun. It's very cool. You get a nice little scenario that's playing out, and they'll do things like the goblins are like warping in buildings and things like that. Very, very cool stuff. And then you'll have a staging point in each of the other faction zones. So far, that is to access world quests, right? That is to access world quests. So once you do actually cap and you reach 120, and as a side note here, I managed to cap my mage by only doing 2 of the 3 zones, and I still had quests left in both. I think that's something to bear in mind here, because there is some minimal reputation requirement. Currently, Nazmir, one of the Horde zones, is bugged about a quarter of the way through, and you can't really progress from there without just searching out quests and things like that. Little unfortunate, but I did pretty much 100% of Vol'dun, although the ending of that is bugged, and I did most of Zuldazar, and I was capped, and I still had plenty of stuff left to do. So XP gain and stuff like that, you can do 2 out of 3 zones, and you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. But for reputation purposes, I believe reputation is just friendly. What I can say is this. I did nearly 100% of 2 zones, and very, very little of one of the zones, and I got access to every world quest based on that. But some players who capped before reputation was enabled, that was part of the beta, is that there was no reputation gains for what you were doing. They did not get access to world quests. So something to bear in mind there. So what you'll get when you get to 120 is, we didn't get a prompt. I assume you will get a prompt. So similar to Legion is when you cap there. I think it's Dadgar. It's like, go and see Dadgar. He's kind of got something to tell you. So in this one, there was nothing, but you do go down to the Horde port specifically, which you'll go to anyway to do your missions and get your missions ticking over. is you'll have a new quest, which is like World Quests. You just have a quest that's called World Quests. Here's your Flight Master's Whistle. So very much the same as, it's very exactly the same as Legion, is you'll get the flight whistle, which you can use, which will teleport you back to the nearest flight point, and then you'll have access to all the World Quests. Let's talk about the World Quests for a moment then. So our new Kirin Tour, so in Legion, the Kirin Tour give you things like the Enigma puzzles and the flying puzzles. They're a little bit different than the ordinary questing. In this one, it's the Tortollans, the Turtle Bros. The Turtle Bros are going to give you their individual quests, so it's currently shell games, things like that, match 2. They're broken right now, which is unfortunate. I'll show some in the background, but they are broken right now. But they're going to give you the slightly different quests to the ordinary. They have spiced up the world quests a little bit. Some of them are horrendously broken, like some of them don't work. The items that you need to find don't spawn, things like that. So they're currently not all implemented by any means, but they have spiced up a little bit. And what is cool is they make sense to the story that you traveled through in that zone. So you still have your standard stuff, which is like kill the rare. Or collect the 8 things when you get there. They still have that usual stuff. But now, if you've played through the zone, you have extra world quests which make sense to the story you did in that area. So, for example, in Zuldazar, you will play through a whole quest line which involves you corrupting some very powerful being by using potions and things like that, and basically poisoning him to weaken him. When you go back there to do the world quest, it's not just a case of repeat that or kill the same mobs. So, you know, in Legion, a lot of the world quests were basically just the same exact quest you did while leveling. Now there's more things such as, here's something fun to do here. Now you unlocked all the power in that area. So one world quest I did was killing 100, very much similar to Zul'Farrak, for everybody who remembers that, standing at the top of the stairs and wiping out 100 assaulting trolls by using the buffs that I generated earlier in the quest lines. So that was really nice. That was a very cool thing. Now, in the other zones, it's the same thing again. You'll go to your staging point, and there's world quests, very similar to exactly the same as you had in Legion. They're just a little bit more interesting. I think that's good. A little bit more interesting, and you will get missions to unlock different outposts, but so far that's not really working. So I assume you're going to just unlock more flight points within the zones, because obviously right now we have one staging point in each of the enemy faction zones. But some of the world quests are right on the other side of the map, which is a big bummer. So there are missions on the mission table to unlock new outposts in the zones, but currently I've done lots of them and nothing's really happened. And in those zones, there was nothing for me to get. Now, here's the separation of things. So in Legion, let's talk about Artifact Power and Azerite Power for a minute. So in BFA, we have the Heart of Azeroth necklace, which absorbs, so we don't have to click anything anymore, which is wonderful. This Azerite Power, which just empowers it and levels it up, right? It just levels it up. So for leveling, and this could alter completely, just leveling to 120, I got mine to level 4 or 5, something like that, which allowed me to get most of the extra bonuses that my Azerite armor, which is what you start the game with. So as soon as you log in, similar to in Legion how you got your artifact weapon, they're going to give you 1 piece of Azerite armor. Very high level, very useful, and that's going to be something you're probably going to keep all the way till 120, but you are still going to be upgrading it via the Azerite Power as you're leveling up. So you'll get a couple of levels, and then you'll be able to get the first point straight away, and then I think it's level 3 or 4 you'll get the second tier, and so on and so forth. So this is where the separation comes in. So in Legion, the idea with Artifact Power, if you remember, was that you would be still rewarded or still have some reason to do content which wasn't particularly relevant to you. That was the idea. So let's suppose you've got really good gear and your friend wants to go and do some more Mythic Plus. The chances are you're not really going to get an item from there, and it's kind of disincentivizing to go there. You're like, I don't really want to do that. So they said, well, Artifact Power is a universal reward that we can offer you. So even if you're doing content that isn't particularly relevant to you, you will still gain some sort of reward and power increase in the form of Artifact Power, right? So it's still kind of worth you doing this content, even if it's not an immediate gratifying gear upgrade, which we know most of the player base cares about, just item level numbers going up, right? So Artifact Power was the solution to that. And it was also something that they could control. So if you wanted to do all the world quests for Artifact Power, things like that, the idea was generally that you should always be working towards more traits. Of course, we eventually finished those out, which will become relevant in a moment. And then they had to come up with concordance, essentially, so you could just everlastingly farm Artifact Power without that system being dead. So they've tried to fix that. They've tried to fix that system this time round. So what they've done this time, instead of making Azerite power just a universal reward, it's actually a very different reward, and they're rewarding you extremely differently for the content you want to do in order to manage that. So let me make it really clear for you. Let's say you want gear, so you're going to go and do dungeons, right? So a good source of gear is dungeons, let's say that. Good dungeons are rewarding, like, basically no Azerite power, right? That's not where you go for Azerite power. So in Legion, it kind of is. If you want to get a lot of artifact power, especially in the early days of Legion, we remember the Maw of Souls spam, right? Decent chance of legendary items, and also was just rewarding AP upon AP. It was the fastest source of artifact power gain at the time, so people did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Maws of Souls runs. They don't want that to happen again. So now, sources of gear, like specific gear upgrades, are going to reward very little Azerite power. So to put it into context, an ordinary world quest for Azerite power at your base 120 character is going to give you something like 400 Azerite power, right? A normal dungeon is going to give you 35, right? Less than a tenth of Azerite power. Like, they'll still give you some, sure, but you'd be better off doing something else. The reason you're going to do that content is because you want gear upgrades. That's why you're doing it. However, the gear you get needs Azerite power. Right, so this is where this separation comes in. So for example, in the dungeon I did today, I got some normal quality shoulders, and the base starting item Azerite level I need for those, in fact I'm logged in here, let me just check, it was actually 11. Right, it's more than double. My current Heart of Azeroth is level 5. It's more than double the Heart of Azeroth level that I've got from leveling from 110 to 120. Right, and the dungeon rewarded me with a solid piece of gear, a 310 item. That's an item level 310 set of shoulders, but I don't get any of the benefits from it. Right, I don't get any of the superior benefits from it. It's just a straight intellect and stamina piece of gear. It has no secondary stats on it whatsoever. The real bonuses come in the form of the Azerite tiers, and I can't get them, and farming dungeons isn't going to give me them either, right? That's not where I go for that. So I can go to dungeons and spam dungeons all day, and I might come out with a decent item level, but in terms of player power, I'm really going to be lacking. I'm going to be lacking pretty hard, because I'm going to have obtained very little to no Azerite power for being there. So you might say, well, what's that? Well, how do we fix that then? Well, Blizzard's come up with separate content that you'll do which targets Azerite power but won't reward you with gear, right? So here's the separation. So you now have two progression paths that need to go hand in hand in order to work. So you'll have things like World Quests, obviously. Well, obviously, similar to Legion, the gear rewards and worth and value of those gear rewards is going to drop off pretty goddamn quickly. So that's going to be like a good source of Azerite power. Looking for similar to what we did in Legion, is going and farming the world quest in order to get as much artifact power as possible. You'll be doing something similar here. But this is where the island expeditions really come into their own, because island expeditions aren't going to give you a lot of gear, but they will give you plenty of Azerite power. So that's what you need to go with hand in hand. You're going to need both of these things to increase player power, and they do not work side by side. You can't do one to get the other. You have to do independently, go out and look for these things. So that's the system. That's what you should expect. Everything else is pretty much exactly the same as Legion, besides this divergence of where to get the best rewards. If you want gear and stuff, you'll go for the gear targeted content. If you want Azerite power to make that gear worthwhile, you're going to have to go and do a different piece of content that won't reward you with gear as well. So some pros and cons to this then. There are pros and cons. The pros are that definitely this varies things up. This does give you incentive to go and do separate content and not just be solely focused on item level. And I'm really okay with that. I'm really focused with players working on other things. Will players understand the value needed in order to get their Azerite power up? I think so. The people are used to getting artifact power at this point in order to unlock very cool things, particularly those who played through, let's say, 3/4 of Legion before the AP sort of auto-capped all the way up to the maximum... what was it called? You know, the research levels. People have got used to that system that, gaining this power is worthwhile if you want your character to get there. Although most people stopped at, like, Concordance 1 for the most part until it became just given to you. I think they could definitely do still with spicing up the Azerite bonuses, because they're still extremely dull. To the point where I can't imagine anybody, so far from what we've seen in dungeons, and some people are doing mythics. I'm hoping to bring mythics to you later hopefully tomorrow, I'm going to get a chance to get into some mythic dungeons with the boys and do those. Nothing that makes you go, holy shit, that's awesome. That's not there yet. Will it ever be there? I do not know. I simply do not know whether that will ever be there. I'm hoping it is. I'm hoping it is. But right now, the bonuses are still just like, your spell does 200 extra damage. Well, okay. You know, like something like that, which is like, oh my god. This is supposed to replace tier sets. Give me something a little spicier, Blizz. A little bit more fire in the belly. But so far, that has not appeared or not shown itself. But it is cool that you have this separate content. Now, the cons of this are pretty obvious. Like, you could very easily dry up on a certain piece of content extremely quickly, particularly gearing. Like, if you've got a few friends and you can spam out some Mythics or Mythic Plus, like, if you're one of those guys, which is an increasing number of people, who have found their little team to go and do Mythic Plus with, or to go and get that, and then you're going to come to, you're very quickly going to hit the point where only, like, Titan Forges, which don't even go that high anymore, are a real reward. A lot of content is going to be dead to you very quickly. Like, all dungeon content could be pretty much dead to you besides doing the one weekly quest. I assume there's going to be a Mythic Plus cachet or something similar. I don't think that system is changing. I think they're maintaining that doing a certain Mythic Plus per week will reward you with something at the end. They're quite happy with that system. And the Azerite power gains are certainly going to have massive diminishing returns at some point. The highest piece of gear on an all piece of gear currently is 17. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually thinking this is going to be my plan over the next week or so, is that we'll take this character now, which has a Heart of Azeroth level 5. I'm going to focus heavily into doing Azerite power gains and see just really where we start to see the drop-off. And I think that's important because in Legion, you might remember, I think it was something like trait number 6 or 7, something like that, and then suddenly, like, the AP requirements to get the next level were enormous. They just went from really normal, really quite friendly, just, you know, you were getting steady rewards with your artifact weapon, and then suddenly it just went, bump, nope, this is now a grind. This is now a huge grind, and there is no way in hell that is not going to happen again. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Right now, it's very hard to tell what it is because you can't get any real data. You can't get any actual data about your Heart of Azeroth. It's just there. I can't see any way of seeing how much power it's got, how much power till the next level. I can't see any numbers. I can click on it all day. Nothing seems to work there. So if somebody knows a way of tracking that, please let me know. But I've asked around and nobody else seems to be able to work it out either. It just sometimes levels up and you don't know how bad it is. So the only way we can figure it out really is jumping out into the world and figuring it out. So that's what you should expect when you're 120, is that kind of feel for it. I'm not going to lie, my face kind of just went, ugh, when it just went straight into, because nothing particularly exciting happens when you hit 120. Like I said, there wasn't even a prompt to go back to the thing. It's like, I'm capped. Nothing happened. You're not getting a new talent. There was no message. There was no anything. It was just like, you capped. It was like getting 119, 118, 111. It was no different whatsoever. It was like getting level 10. It was like, you know, well, I think you get a talent at level 10. So nothing actually happened. And it was just like, here's your world quest. And I was like, oh, God, man. Whoo. You know, we're straight back into it. And it does have that feel of being like a add-on to Legion rather than a brand new expansion, because you're like, okay, I'm straight back into what I've been doing for the last year, and it's pretty much identical. But I'm going to play around with it for a week. I'm going to be like a capped character for a week, see what it's going to be like in the early days of BFA, and still expand things and see what's going on there, and then we can draw some better conclusions, because I might change my mind. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.